bet you didn't know this, but Starro is not actually Starro's real name. In fact, Starro isn't a he at all. Starro is a girl. And what's her name, you ask? Eileen. Welcome to 5 Points of Articulation, where I review action figures and then articulate 5 points to help you decide if you want to add that figure to your collection. The 5 points I discuss are packaging, presentation, posability, playability, and price. I'm Jason, and if you enjoy my content, please like, share, subscribe, do all the YouTube rigmarole. Today, we're taking a look at the Target-exclusive DC Multiverse Crime Syndicate Power Ring. Not only that, but also the completed Starro the Conqueror. Starting off with the packaging, and it's our extra-wide Build-A-Figure window box. As if you didn't know, we're collecting to build Starro the Conqueror. This, of course, is number 4 out of 4. Name and logo on the side, legal on the bottom, barcode for those using apps like Brickseek, and that great picture of Starro on the back. And by great, I mean greatly misleading in terms of how big it actually is. Over here is a key of all the parts, down here are the instructions on how to put them together, and here's what he's supposed to look like when he's all finished. Whoever voted on Power Ring having a boring digital render, you win, but despite that, for packaging, I'm still giving Power Ring 1 whole point. Moving on to presentation, and parallax stands at 7 1/4 inches. Parallax. Power Ring. Power Ring is just parallax. Seriously though, this is just parallax with a new head, different shoulders, and no cape. You could make the argument that because they're both evil versions of Green Lantern, they might have a similar aesthetic. It's not like all the extraneous detail distracts. But then we get the green stripes over the segmented legs, and I'm not gonna lie, it's giving me flashbacks to Rebirth Superman's boots. Don't get me wrong, action figure production is expensive, and I know that reuse is the name of the game, but that reuse does have to make sense. Say what you will about all the reuse for Marvel Legends, but it's not like they're gonna spray paint some webs all over Captain America and call it Spider-Man. Granted, that's because they're too cheap to paint the webs half the time, but you get the idea. Also, and once again, I cannot stress this enough, please, for the love of Todd, pick a green and stick with it. Whew! I am uncharacteristically fired up over this one. There are actually things I do like. Take for instance the head sculpt. They did do a really good job. The shoulder piece is nicely sculpted and does look straight out of the comic, and even if I do think this is lazy, the paint is pretty vibrant and also very crisp. Again, I do appreciate the need for reuse, especially when budgeting for a Build-A-Figure like Starro, but I also think that this figure highlights the need for McFarlane to create a basic blank body for when situations like this arise. For presentation, I'm giving Power Ring 1/2 point. Moving on to posability, and Power Ring's head's on a dumbbell joint. Thanks to the lack of hair, he can look up a pretty decent amount. He can also really bury the chin, really great tilt, and all the way around. Moving on down, and Hal has swivel hinge shoulders that raise up this far. Obviously, the shoulder pauldrons get in the way. Forward and back with a rotator cuff though. Bicep swivel, double jointed elbows, and then traveling all the way down the arm, he has McFarlane wrist balls. They can swivel and hinge. Shifting to the torso, and he has a diaphragm joint and a dumbbell waist. Using both together, and he can arch back this far, which is fantastic. And in tandem with his neck, this is the kind of flying pose you can get him in. He can also hunch forward a bit more than usual. Naturally, he can tilt and twist. Below the waist, and Hal has a typical McFarlane hips. They can kick forward a little bit over 90 degrees, and do a pretty near perfect split. Great amount of twist at the hip. Of course, these boots would have been a fantastic place to hide a thigh cut. Either way, he has some very crunchy double jointed knees, toe articulation, and McFarlane ankle balls that can swivel, hinge, and pivot. What? If McFarlane can reuse parallax, then so can I. And for all my complaints about reuse, our articulation is not one of them. For posability, I'm giving Power Ring 1 whole point. Before we continue, if you like this video, do me a favor and give it a like. I put a lot of love into my videos, and your likes really do help more people to see them. Moving on to playability, and Power Ring comes with a trading card and a figure stand. If you want to read a glowing write-up of John Stewart that says nothing whatsoever about Power Ring or the Crime Syndicate, pause here. Otherwise, once again, all he comes with is this Starro. It's soft and squishy, and wraps its tentacles around figures like so. Of course, the main reason a lot of people want this figure is the Build-A-Piece. At long last, we can finish Starro. This, of course, are his bottom legs. Flipping it around, we can see some suckers. Pretty sure if you look closely enough, one of them is me buying a repainted parallax for 2 legs of a starfish, and up here we have an adorable little underbite. The one thing we don't have is any way of standing him up. That said, clicking them all together, and he looks looks great. Even though all the sections don't match perfectly, it does come together really well, and I continue to be very impressed by the engineering that went into this. But playability is more than just accessories and build-a-figures. It's also about how well your figure plays with others. For the other members of the Crime Syndicate, and here we have Ultraman, here we have Owlman, and Superwoman. And as a bonus, here we have the Blackest Night Deathstorm. For my other John Stewart figures, and here we have DC Comics Multiverse by Mattel, and Endless Winter by DC Multiverse. For another evil Green Lantern, and I think I've talked enough about this guy, but for some heroic Green Lanterns, and here we have the Blackest Night Kyle Rayner, DC Essentials Hal Jordan, and DC Multiverse Hal Jordan. Looking at the Green Lantern base body, and I guess the overly detailed aesthetic does work in Power Ring's favor. For the rest of our Justice League, and here's Superman from Action Comics 1000, and Superman from Hush. For a couple of Batman comparisons, and here we have Rebirth, and Batman from The Three Jokers. Here we have Endless Winter Aquaman, The Flash from DC Rebirth, and the Wonder Woman designed by Todd McFarlane. For some Starro comparisons, and here he is with Power Ring, and then for a couple of DC Multiverse versions of the Justice League, here he is with Batman and Superman, and then here we have Batman and Superman from DC Icons. For DC Universe Classics, here we have Aquaman and the Flash. For 5-inch scale, here's Aquaman and the Flash from Total Justice. And then for the smallest scales I have, here we have Kenner Superpowers, McFarlane Superpowers, and Spin Master. Since it seems appropriate, here's Starro with Harley Quinn and Bloodsport from the Suicide Squad. For a relative scale comparison, here's Starro with Pizza Spidey and the Spectacular Spider-Man. And of course, here they are with Stealth Iron Man. For those of you who are curious, here's how the Endless Winter John Stewart head looks on the Power Ring body. Proportion-wise, I think it works pretty well. Keep in mind though that you will need to touch up the neck because the skin tones don't match. Other way around, and I really like this. Thanks to the Justice League cartoon, I often picture John with no hair and a beard. This is halfway there. On the other hand, I don't really picture him with a mask. And since this is Power Ring, it does kind of have that butterfly look to it. And again, if you want to do this, you will need to touch up the neck. But Jason, I hear you ask, how did you get Starro to stand up during the comparisons? A neck-a-flight stand right down the cake hole. Same method I used for the Superpowers Batwing. Since I did mainly want this for Starro, I don't mind the Power Ring didn't come with any unique accessories of his own, but I do wish that Starro had been given something so I didn't have to do this. Don't get me wrong, it is nice to kinda complete the Crime Syndicate. For real though, where's Johnny Quick? Even so, for playability, I'm giving Power Ring half a point. This leaves us with nothing left to discuss but the price. Power Ring and the entire Crime Syndicate wave are Target exclusives and retail for $25 each. With all my hemming and hawing about reuse and Starro not having a base, you probably think I'm going to dock at points, but that's not true. For a figure, an accessory, and a build-figure piece, I think it's decent. And again, I don't mind that they have reuse. In fact, if they had only sprung for new thighs, I probably wouldn't have complained at all. For price, I'm getting Power Ring 1 whole point for a grand total of 4 out of 5. For more of the Crime Syndicate, check out this video on Ultraman, or for the Suicide Squad, click here. Was I too harsh on this figure, or did I hit the nail on the head? Sound off in the comments below. Do you think we'll be getting a Johnny Quick and maybe even a base for Starro? Sound off on that too. Thank you so much for watching. I'll be back again real soon, but until then, play nice and have fun.